This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon. Did something sound a little bit different there in that intro than normal? You tell me. That's right. Usually you hear me say, welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast, but no longer that is. Thanks to you guys and your great loyalty to me and this awesome show and this awesome podcast network, I have now been asked to start doing the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is amazing. So we're going to stick with our football conversations, of course. So all of you guys that have loved and stuck with me with listening to football from all throughout these last 6-7 months during the NFL season and a little bit before, keep on rolling with us, all right? Keep on rolling with us because we're going to still be talking a lot of football. But we're also going to get to mix in all the other sports out there. Basketball, NBA, college. Right now is a perfect time because we've got college hoops. We've got March Madness, the great tournament. One of the best. March Madness is one of the best tournaments you can possibly have in all of sports. It really is. The layout, the ability to have the underdog make a run, Cinderella stories left and right. Why? Because it's a one-game format. Anything can happen in sports in one game. That's why sports is so amazing. So we'll be all over that as we enter the month of March here. But everything, baseball's getting started. Spring training just started. Hockey, for all you big hockey fans out there. I know it's not as big as some of these other sports, but I am a massive hockey fan. Diehard Carolina Hurricanes fan here in North Carolina. For all my Hurricanes fans and for all my hockey fans, shout out. We will be talking a lot of hockey. So this is big time news. I hope you guys are as excited about it as I am. If you can tell in my voice, I am pumped up because I can't wait to talk all sports with you, including the great NFL and college football as we've been doing over these last 6-7 months. So stay tuned. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys and your loyalty and all the listeners that have stuck with me throughout this entire season. Things have been great. Things have been going great. So now I get to do all sports, which is so fun to me. It's something that I've wanted to do ever since I've started at this company and ever since I've started doing sports talk in the first place. I love talking all sports. That's what I did when I did my show when I was in college. I had a weekly show with I went to UNC Charlotte, and I had a weekly live radio station, live radio show with the school station there. That was a lot of fun. So we'll be pulling out all the tricks, all right? We're going to, seriously, we are going to have so much fun with you guys on this show. We're still going to take a lot of your tweets. We'll bring a lot of you guys involved, and we'll have some back-and-back action, going back, debating. This time, it won't just be football. It's going to be everything. So hopefully we'll widen the spectrum here. We'll make the conversations a little bit deeper, a little bit more intense, a little bit more fun, and we'll open it up to all sports. You can't really go wrong when you give me a mic and you say, let's talk all sports. I'm going to be happy as all get out, and I hope you guys as listeners are going to be happy to stick around and tune in as we go through it all. So think about it. Now that we're doing all sports here, I mean, where do we start? It's crazy, right? It was so funny. I was just talking to my buddy about this and telling him how, I'm going to all sports and I'm doing all sports, and he's a big listener. He's definitely been a big part, loyal, just like all of you that are listening. And it's like right when it started to feel that football wasn't like dying down, because this is going to be an off season. Like, if you've been listening to me these last couple of weeks since the off season started, I've been saying it's going to be an off season like no other, right? It's going to be one of the busiest and just headline wrecking off seasons. That's kind of the best way to put it, because it's, you know how you open up a newspaper for all of you back in the day, or you open up an app, the New York Times, or any type of way that you get your news. The top headline is always bold, right? It's always in the biggest font, because that's what gets you. So this off season is going to be all about those headlines. Stuff that's drawing you in, bringing you in to say what's happening, because there's a lot of big headlines out there that we're going to go through. So I was like, it's going to be a great offseason, but also you got to think eventually it's going to die down. So now I get to talk all sports, which is going to be great. And then right when that happens, what do you know? The Russell Wilson news comes out, the J.J. Watt news comes out, and now it's like I'm about to get a all sports show, and I'm going to end up talking the opening segment of my first GSMC sports podcast with football. Sometimes you just can't run away from football. That's why I tell you guys all the time, it is a $1 billion, 24/7, 12-month sport that we've got to talk about all the time. And that's what we're going to do. Now, this show is going to not just be all about football, though. There is so much. So we're going to open up the show with the Russell Wilson, J.J. Watt news, a little bit of mix of both. And then we're going to dive into some NBA talk, all right? I have an opening remark here for my first basketball topic with this new GSMC Sports podcast that has to do with where we stand right now with the teams in the West and the teams in the East. And there's one team in particular in the Los Angeles Clippers that I want to hone in on here, because last year we all know about what happened with the Clippers, right? We all know. They choked. It was supposed to be all year, Lakers, Clippers. Lakers held up their bargain. The Clippers didn't. Has anything changed this year? I know they've got a good record. I know they're tied for third in the West. They're 24-12. But has anything actually changed? That's something that I'm going to hit you guys with right now, actually. I thought I was going to come back with it to start segment number 2, but as I just kind of gave that tease, it got me so hyped, and this is actually bad radio for all of you out there. Sports Radio 101 lesson for you. When you start a tease, never then go right into actually finishing that tease. Okay, the whole point is to sell the audience. You give a nice little tease, and you come back to it. So probably not the best thing I'm doing on my first show here, but hopefully my bosses and my producer, Sarah, who is awesome, by the way, great producer, they let me slide here because I just got too excited as I started to tease it, where I'm just going to go right into the tease right away. But to give you guys a secondary little tease here, we are going to talk about Russell Wilson. And for all you Seattle fans out there, it's not good news. What I'm about to tell you is not good news. Because sometimes these things happen, it's really hard to undo it. And while Russell Wilson's telling us nothing, he's really telling us something at the same time. So stay tuned for that coming up in segment number 2, as well as J.J. Watt signing with the Arizona Cardinals. What does that mean? And I have more of a thought. You know how I like to think a little bit different on this stuff. I have more of a thought about what that means for Cliff Kingsbury, their head coach. Not so much what it means about J.J. Watt. All right, so all of that is coming up in just a little bit. I hope that tease was good for you right there. But I want to go to the Clippers here, okay? The Los Angeles Clippers are sitting there at 24-12. They are third place in the monstrous Western Conference, right? You got Utah at 27-7. You got Los Angeles Lakers at 24-11. You got the LA Clippers at 24-12. And you got the Phoenix Suns rounding out the top 4 at 22-11. Milwaukee Bucks and Clippers faced off Sunday afternoon, this past Sunday, on an ABC showdown, right? the Clippers had the lead pretty much the entire game, all the way down pretty much through three quarters. I mean, it was back and forth, even throughout the fourth quarter, and then they lost it down the stretch. They lost it in the final couple of minutes. And look, it was great to see Milwaukee finally move the ball. That's something that Milwaukee has a lot of talent, but what they've been missing is they're not very good with what they do off the ball. They don't move the ball very well. It's just iso ball. Giannis try and do this. Chris Middleton try and do this. And that's why they ended up getting stumped in the playoffs the year before and last year. So it was good to see Milwaukee and Giannis show up in a big game like that. And I think that will help them moving forward. But I don't want to talk about Milwaukee right now. We have a long time to talk about Milwaukee. I want to focus on the Clippers here. What is happening right now with the Clippers is fascinating to me. Remember, the Clippers were built as this team to take over LA and take over the league, right? When Kawhi and Paul George joined up, it was, hey, Kawhi, Paul George, championships. LA, is it Laker town anymore? Or are the Clippers taking over? That's what we were hearing. I mean, those were the type of things. LeBron went to the Lakers, and Kawhi and Paul George, they both could have gone and joined LeBron. They both decided to say no. Instead of going to join LeBron, we're going to go against him. And remember, it was a big deal, right? We will be his rival instead of teaming up with him. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, they're telling LeBron no. They're telling LeBron we don't want to do that. They're telling LeBron we want to come for you instead of play with you. And everyone was like, okay, that says something right there, right? That says a lot. And it was pumped up. It got us all pumped up because it gave us a storyline. Lakers versus Clippers. The Battle of LA. You can sell a movie with that storyline, right? And if we all remember, all last season, it was Lakers will meet the Clippers in the West Finals, and the winner of that will win it all. That's what it was all season. Well, the Lakers held up their end of the bargain, but the Clippers didn't. They choked away a 3-1 lead in the playoffs to the Denver Nuggets. We all remember this. I don't need to go through it. But someone had to take the blame, right? So they fire their head coach, and not just any head coach, future Hall of Fame head coach Doc Rivers, championship head coach Doc Rivers, thinking that will change something. Because someone had to take the fall, right? Or did they do it thinking that would actually change? That's my question. Was it a scapegoat firing, or was it, hey, look, we actually believe hiring Tyronn Lue, who's their head coach now, who's also a great head coach, and firing Doc Rivers, that's going to change this team. Has things really changed, though? Or was Doc actually just the fall guy? What's happening with the Los Angeles Clippers is fascinating to me. More importantly, what's happening with Kawhi Leonard. In the game on Sunday, Kawhi once again had his chance to knock down a game-tying three to send the game to overtime. He missed it, just like he's missed many of those shots this season and last. Kawhi now shoots 28% from the field in clutch moments this year. That is the worst in the league. Kawhi is fascinating because he is a great player. He's a very good player. One of the best in the league easily, hands down. But the question is this. I'm not asking you guys, is he a superstar? We all know he is. Is Kawhi a franchise leader? Is he a franchise changer? See, there is a big difference in a superstar and a franchise changer. You got to understand the difference between those two before we can have this conversation. LeBron is a franchise changer. Chris Paul is a franchise changer. Tim Duncan, when he was playing, was a franchise changer. Luka Doncic looks like he is going to be a franchise changer. These are guys that the culture does not have to be set once they arrive. They are able to change the culture of the franchise themselves. If they come in, they are the leaders, people want to play with them, they build the culture from the ground up. LeBron is obviously the best at this. He's done it with Cleveland twice, and then he did it with LA and a Los Angeles Lakers team that hadn't make the playoffs in almost a decade, right? So that's a franchise changer. A franchise changer is someone who the culture doesn't have to be set for them. They can go in there and they can pick, they can put their hands all over the place and they're going to change that franchise. They're going to change that culture. Maybe sometimes it doesn't change to winning right away, but they're going to change the way everything is. The culture will change. Chris Paul is doing this better than anyone as of recently with what he did in Oklahoma City. After everyone else, even though their culture was already set, they had a great culture, he was able to lead the team. And then he goes to Phoenix, who did not have a great culture, and he went to lead that team, and he's doing that right now, right? Then you have superstars, guys like Kawhi Leonard, who, when the culture is already set for them, they are able to come in, and boy, are they able to dominate. I mean, they're able to be some of the best players in the league when the culture is set for them. You don't ask many of them. You don't have to ask much of them other than go get me a bucket, Kawhi. That's it. Go get me a bucket. Go score me a basket. And that's when they're at their very best. And that's when Kawhi is at his very best. And that is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what Toronto did with Kawhi. That's exactly what San Antonio had with Kawhi. The Spurs already had a culture. I mean, shoot, they had Tim Duncan. They had Manu Ginobili. They had Tony Parker. Those were the franchise changers. They already set that culture up along with Pop. So all Kawhi had to do as a young pup, getting drafted out of San Diego State, he just had to come over there, play great defense, and ball out and hit his shots. That's it. He didn't have to talk. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to play basketball and show up in the big moments when he needed to. And guess what? He did it perfectly. Then Toronto. Toronto had a perfect culture. They had Kyle Lowry, who was the leader of that team, the vocal leader, the tough guy. They just needed a superstar. They just needed someone to get them over the top, someone to get them a bucket in the playoffs when the time was right. That's what Kawhi did. And once again, he did it really well. The Clippers are not asking of that from Kawhi. See, the Clippers are asking for way more than that. The Clippers are asking him to be a franchise changer. The Clippers aren't asking him to be a superstar. The Clippers are asking him to completely be a culture changer, a franchise changer. That's what the Clippers thought they brought Kawhi in to do. They thought that he was going to be that leader. They said, hey, Kawhi, build our culture. We've been the stepbrother living down in the basement since we've become a franchise. And we've been just looking up at that Los Angeles Laker team and all of their fan base for years and years and years. We're bringing you in to change that. Okay, that's different. Now, we all get that, right? There's a big difference there than what San Antonio asked him to do, than what Toronto asked him to do, and now what the Clippers are asking him to do. We all understand that here, right? Kawhi's a different dude. He's quiet. He isn't going to chew out that teammate. He isn't going to be that rah-rah guy in the locker room. And look, that's not the only way to lead. There are many ways to lead in sports and in life. I'm not debating that. Some leaders are vocal, others lead by example. This isn't about just being a great leader. No. When you're trying to change a franchise, you need to be more than just a leader. You need to be a franchise changer, a guy who will do it all. A guy who will take the blame when things go bad, and a guy who's going to gather everyone when the times are rough. What did we hear all last season about the Los Angeles Clippers? There's tension in the locker room. Players feel like the stars are getting better treatment than everyone else. Kawhi lives in San Diego. He doesn't even live in LA. So he's always late to practice. He was late to the team flight a couple times ago. He's load managing. He's sitting out on all these games. When the other hand, we looked across the huddle over there, and LeBron James, who's 36 years old, played in every single game last season. And Anthony Davis, who's had many injury problems throughout his year, played in 62 out of the 67 games last season. Remember, the season was cut short because of the whole pandemic. So they didn't play the whole 82. While you had Kawhi Leonard play 57, so 10 games left. You had Paul George play 48. Now, Paul George was hurt in the beginning of the year, so you do have to keep that in mind, and we understand that. But right when Anthony Davis, because remember, the Lakers are a team that in history they've been extremely successful. But before last year, you remember, they weren't making the playoffs every year. They weren't even getting close to making the playoffs. They were in a serious down spot. They were drafted number 2 overall every single year for like 3 years straight in the NBA draft. So they had to change the culture as well. LeBron had to change the culture. And what was one of the first things that Anthony Davis and LeBron James said when they came in? They said, we don't want to lose 2 games in a row. And we're going to play as many games as we possibly can to set a standard. And they went out there and did that. And that set a culture, that set a tone for the entire season for the rest of the guys on that team right away. Kawhi Leonard did the complete opposite. He didn't hang around the team that much. He lived in San Diego. He was doing his own thing. He had his own personal trainer there. These are huge reasons why they imploded and blew that lead in the playoffs last year. They didn't have that leader. They didn't have that glue to keep the team together. Right? A guy to take that responsibility when things are not going well. That's not Kawhi. Kawhi is a great player. But that's not all. And this isn't anything against him. Not everyone can be a franchise changer. It just doesn't work that way, right? Not everyone was born with that. It's something that it's truly, it's a personality thing. It's something that you can definitely gain. It's not like you have to be born with it, but not everyone has that. And that's totally okay when your culture is already set. But if you're expecting someone to set that culture for you, well, then you're in trouble. You're in trouble. And I don't know if the Los Angeles Clippers realized that when they were bringing Kawhi in. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. Nice saying that a little bit here. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. Segment number 1 down of the first GSMC Sports Podcast. How do you think I did? We're going to come back. We're going to finish up this conversation here. I got a little bit more to say on the Clippers and where they're at in the standings. And just take a step back and look at the West as a whole. Utah's been amazing. Are they the team to beat? Or do we still have the Lakers there as the favorite if Anthony Davis comes back healthy? That's something we're going to discuss. Don't go anywhere. And then, of course, Russell Wilson. We'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in as we are now doing the GSMC Sports Podcast from now on. So that means, as obvious as you can tell with the title, we'll be talking all things sports. You name it, we will talk it. Even if you want to talk a little UFC, a little boxing, a little golf, Tiger Woods. How cool was that scene on Sunday? That was seriously one of the coolest scenes that I've seen in sports. For those of you that missed it, obviously we all know, unless you've been living under a rock the last week or so, Tiger Woods got in a very scary accident, almost a fatal accident. It was a single car accident. He was not impaired or anything like that. It was a windy road, and they don't know if he was speeding or anything, but they definitely know that he was not under the influence or anything like that. And he got in a crash, and, he could have easily died. The officer on site said that he is lucky he didn't die, honestly. So, luckily he's alive and he's okay, that he got to see what happened on Sunday. And what happened on Sunday, everybody that has known Tiger Woods or even knows a little bit about him knows that on Sundays in golf tournaments, what does he do? He always wears the red, right? When he's in contention to possibly win a tournament, he wears that Tiger Woods Nike red polo with the black pants. That's the famous Tiger look. It's honestly probably one of the most popular, well-known sports look in all of sports, right? It really is. Like Sundays, golf, red, Tiger Woods. That is what comes to your mind when you hear Sundays in golf. You hear Tiger Woods, that you just immediately think the red polo, the black pants. Well, there was a tournament going on this weekend, and what a bunch of golfers did, a lot of golfers, they wore the red polo in tribute to Tiger. And that was just the coolest scene to see. I mean, even guys like Phil Mickelson, Phil and Tiger, they've had their beef over the years, right? They've battled it out some, and even he wore it, and that right there shows it. And Tiger, he was watching. He said it was the coolest thing he's seen. Tiger, I mean, my message to you, man, if you didn't think that you were loved, you had to watch that and see, because you are clearly really loved. And also, you're clearly very understood by your peers of what you've done for them. Because they understand, which is really cool. The Tiger, I think this is one of the best things that you could take away from your legacy. And I know I'm talking like Tiger's listening, but maybe he is. I love Tiger Woods, so that would be really cool, but I doubt it. He's got more important things going on, like getting healthy. Please do, Tiger. But I think one of the things, if I'm Tiger, that I would be most proud of is what he has clearly done for all of his peers. He's changed the game of golf. He has made the game of golf so popular that it's risen the monetary value, prize money, sponsorships, television ratings. All of that equals more money in his peers' pockets, in his players' pockets, right? So, and you could kind of tell on Sunday with all these guys wearing the red, and then after the game, after the round, they were talking about Tiger, the winner, Colin Morikawa, I think you pronounce his how you pronounce his last name. Sorry if I messed that up a little bit. He literally looked in the camera after he won. This is a young kid we're talking about here, a young stud on the tour, and said, "Thank you, Tiger. We don't get to say this enough, but thank you." And Rory McIlroy stood up there and said, we understand what Tiger's done to the game. He has changed the game, and we are so appreciative of that. So I just thought that was the coolest scene ever. I really did. I thought that was awesome that these guys got together and did that. And it just, Tiger, you're loved, man. You're loved, and it's tough. I don't know if you'll ever play another game of another competitive PGA Tour round of golf again. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be the one to doubt you. I'm not. Yeah, you have proven people wrong so many times. I'm not going to be that idiot here standing up in the corner saying, nah, you're not going to do it again. No, because if I had to put my hard-earned money down, I'd bet that you will play again, because that's just who you are. But if you don't, that scene on Sunday should show you've done more than you can even imagine. You've done more than anyone else has ever done for the game of golf. People play golf because of you. People watch golf because of you. And it's pretty cool to see that your peers do that. The people that are literally playing against you every day, that should show a lot of respect that they have for you, which is awesome. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami, transitioning from GSMC Football Podcast to GSMC Sports Podcast for now on here on out. We will be doing a show every Monday and Thursday. So those shows should come out around Tuesday, Saturday, every time. So stay tuned for that. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the little bell so you get a notification every time a new episode comes up. Now, we're going to get into, J.J. Watt just signed with the Arizona Cardinals on a big 2-year deal. Surprise team, right? We all said there's going to be a wild card team in there. We all thought it was either going to be Green Bay, his hometown. He went to the University of Wisconsin. He has a place there. We thought it was going to maybe go to Steelers to play with his brothers. Both TJ and Derek Watt are both in Pittsburgh, so we thought maybe they could all three play there together. Maybe Baltimore, Cleveland was a big option, Buffalo. So these were the teams. Those were the teams that were thrown around like crazy. Arizona was never thrown around, but it makes total sense why he went there. It really does. I totally get it. So that's something we're going to discuss. We're also going to dive into the Russell Wilson thing. But really quickly, I want to finish up this conversation on the Clippers here. And, my whole thing was this. Look, I'm not bashing on Kawhi Leonard. I don't want people to think that I'm coming on here on my first, GSMC sports show and I'm trying to get a hot take out there and bash Kawhi. That's not what this is. Kawhi is a superstar. Kawhi is a top 5, probably top 4-3 player in the game. He is a stud. He's a 2-time champion, and he's earned both of those championships without a doubt. But he's just not a franchise changer. There is a huge difference in these two things, and that's my whole point behind this. I think the Clippers thought that they were getting someone that was going to change the culture. Not everyone's up for that. Some people, they just want to put the ball on the court and get into the bucket, collect the wins for you, walk away. Collect their money, walk away, and they'll do a really damn good job doing it too. A really good job collecting those wins for you. I mean, they'll kill it. Left and right. They'll win you championships even, just like he did in San Antonio and Toronto, right? But when you're asking him to not just have to be the guy that's playing ball, now he's got to worry about everything else. He's got to worry about the one guy on the roster who has an issue with the other guy on the roster. He's got to worry about someone not getting as much not getting the ball enough in their hands. He's got to deal with that. He's got to deal with the coach telling him to tell players about what to do. He's got to deal with getting players together to do team workouts in the offseason or making sure players aren't going out and partying. These are things that you have to step up as your franchise guy, get everyone together. They didn't have that leader in the playoffs last year, and boy, was it obvious when things got tight. It was so obvious. I mean, every time it looked like the Denver Nuggets were going to come up and take a lead on them, they just gave in. And once the Nuggets got the lead, you felt it was over because there was no camaraderie there. There was they just didn't care for each other. You could tell. There was no one stepping up and saying, get him, play defense, step up, let me hit this shot. And I think that type of pressure is weighing on him, and now we're not seeing as clutch of a Kawhi anymore. We're not seeing that great 3-point, percentage that we were seeing. I'm not seeing him do some of the things that we saw him do in Toronto and in San Antonio, because that's not his role anymore. And you know what's crazy is it's not me hating on Kawhi. Like Anthony Davis, he's the same way. Anthony Davis, he was drafted number 1 overall in New Orleans. They were hoping that he was going to be that LeBron, that franchise changer. He was there for a good amount of time, made the playoffs a couple years. That was it. They never advanced. They advanced one time in the playoffs when they had who? Rajon Rondo, a legit culture changer. Rajon Rondo is a leader. There's no doubt about that. Ask that Boston team in 2008 that won the NBA championship. They weren't winning that without Rondo. So he was there with New Orleans. They won one playoff season, one playoff series in 8 years. One of the best players in the game, the best center probably in the game, him and Joel Embiid battling it out. But he's just not a franchise changer. And guess what? He doesn't have to be anymore. You know why? Because he's got LeBron. He doesn't have to be the main guy. All he has to do is go out there and ball. He comes to LA with LeBron. He lets LeBron do all that stuff, all that hard work, that stuff that he doesn't have to deal with. He lets LeBron do all the franchise changing, all the leader stuff. And what does AD do? He absolutely thrives. He has one of his best seasons he's had. He dominated in the playoffs. He was hitting buzzer beaters to win playoff games, dominating in the finals, and then wins his first ever championship. Pretty remarkable, because all he had to worry about was balling on the court. That's it. Putting the ball down and balling. Nothing else. There's a big difference when we're talking about that type of stuff. All superstars are not the same. There's a huge difference in a superstar and a culture changer and a franchise changer. It's a big difference. It's just not the same. And again, that's okay. It's okay to be a superstar. I mean, it's more than okay, right? Like, what are we talking about? It's awesome. There's a very select few that can actually be a superstar and a franchise changer and a game changer. That's something we know. That we understand the difference there, right? I'm laying that out pretty simple, right? We get that. And when you don't have that type of leader, when you don't have that type of game changer, that franchise changer, I don't want to say game changer because Kawhi is a game changer. It's much more than a game changer. Kawhi is 1,000% a game changer. But when you don't have that on a team, and a team that's supposed to be really good, you lack the chemistry. You completely lose the chemistry. And Doc Rivers, who, don't get me wrong, Doc Rivers definitely was at fault for some things that happened. He did not do his best coaching down the stretch in the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. But Doc Rivers was just a fall guy. They just had to blame someone. And they weren't going to blame their superstar player, Kawhi Leonard. They weren't going to blame their superstar player, Paul George, even though I think he's more of a star. He's a really good star. Right below a superstar. They weren't going to blame those guys. No. They were going to blame it on the head coach. And they were hoping that Tyronn Lue, who's another great head coach, will bring in some more responsibility. He'll place more responsibility on those top players. And he will. That's something Tyronn Lue will do. He put a lot of responsibility on LeBron in 2016 when they won the championship against Golden State and that 73-9 win team. But there's only so much an NBA coach can do. This isn't college. There's only so much he can do. At the end of the day, it's still going to have to be the player that steps up and do the most. And it just feels like there's that same issue with the Clippers. They're still a good team, 24-12, one of the best records in the league. But to me, it just feels like they're missing something. And when I feel it the most is down the stretch in games. It just seems like it's stale. They lose these games down the stretch. Kawhi's missing shots. Paul George is missing shots. They're missing something. And I think what they're missing is that chemistry, that communication ability, that franchise changer. They got the talent. There's no doubt about that. They have all the talent in the world. But what they don't have, to me, is that franchise changer. We'll see if Kawhi can change it up and end up becoming that, but it's hard to kind of morph into that at this point in his career. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Hope everyone's having an awesome day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us on this great day. What a start so far. We've talked about a lot of stuff. It's been a lot of fun. And now some big news here before we open up segment number 3, quarter number 3 with the Russell Wilson news. I want to talk about J.J. Watt. For all of you that just now you all heard, I'm sure, J.J. Watt signed with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, again, surprise team, right? We kind of, for a second, I know I threw it out there. What if J.J. Watt went back with his former teammate DeAndre Hopkins? Remember, J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins were teammates in Houston for many, many years. They both were drafted by the Houston franchise. They had a good relationship. DeAndre Hopkins was shipped out. He was traded by former Houston Texans head coach Bill O'Brien. And this offseason, J.J. Watt was released by the Houston Texans in more of a goodwill type of move from what we all believed, saying, you're in the last couple years of your career, go try and win a championship. Except, I actually think he has many more years to play. I just think he was on a team that wasn't really letting him show what he still had. Now, obviously, the one problem with J.J. Watt is his injuries. If he gets injured, like he has been as of late, that will be a different issue, right? You can't stop injuries. If injuries keep on happening, it is what it is. But if he can stay healthy, I believe he can still ball. Now, the interesting thing about this move is, why did he pick Arizona? Obviously, he has the relationship there with DeAndre Hopkins, but was that the main reason? It could have been. We really don't know. I hear Arizona's a great place to settle down your last couple years, great place to retire. We've seen players towards the end of their careers go to Arizona. Edgerrin James did it. Emmitt Smith did it. Kurt Warner did it. A lot of those guys had some luck, too. Had some success. Kurt Warner went to the Super Bowl. There was a lot of stuff there, right? J.J. Watt, a lot of the teams that were surrounded and in the conversation were Buffalo, were Cleveland, were Green Bay, were Pittsburgh. These teams that were right on the edge of possibly being a legit Super Bowl contender, right? All of those teams were in the playoffs and won a playoff game, or in Pittsburgh's situation, was 11-0 before they had a complete, massive collapse because of a lot of injuries, to be exact, and other things, but we've been through that. So why does Arizona come out of nowhere? Well, I don't know. That's something we'll find out when he talks about it. But what I do know is this makes Arizona very, very intriguing this season to follow for one reason. You now have Kyler Murray. You now have DeAndre Hopkins. You've got Christian Kirk. You've got a lot of really good pieces on the offensive side of the ball. You've got guys like Budda Baker, one of the best safeties in the league. There's a lot of good pieces there. And then you have head coach Cliff Kingsbury, who's going to be in his third year as the head coach. His first year was okay. Second year, they did have a big increase, but then they dropped off. They were on pace to make the playoffs. Their last couple of weeks were bad. Kyler did get hurt, so not all his fault, but it dropped off. Now remember, Cliff Kingsbury was not very successful in college. He was a decent head coach at Texas Tech, but he didn't really win much. So the fact that he got hired was kind of a bit of an eye-opening. But the reason he did get hired was because of his offensive system. Remember, the league at that point, and it still is to an extent, it was going in a heavily offensive way. They were trying to find the next Sean McVay. So Arizona hired Cliff. And also, Cliff and Kyler have a very good relationship together, and that's important. Your head coach, your quarterback, you want that. What this signing tells me is the pressure is on, Cliff. The pressure is on, Mr. Kingsbury. You got to win this year, and you got to make the playoffs, because now you're going to have some really big names on your team. You've got Kyler Murray in his third year, right? You've got DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. You've got Budda Baker, and now you've got J.J. Watt. And even though he is older and he has had some injury history, he still is a baller. They're going to want wins in Arizona. And they're going to want more than wins. They're going to want playoff appearance. You don't have to make the Super Bowl or anything like that. That's nonsense. But I think Cliff Kingsbury, if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, his seat is going to become really, really hot. It was already a move that was questioned from the beginning. He's had some success, but now it's year 3. He's settling into the NFL. Kyler Murray is becoming a really good quarterback. They don't want to waste those years before they have to pay Kyler. Remember, we always talk about this, guys. The best time to win as an NFL franchise is before you have to pay your rookie quarterback. You find a good rookie quarterback and you put a bunch of pieces around him because you can spend money before you have to give him that big contract. Arizona is in that spot right now. They can't waste these years. Now they got J.J. Watt. The pressure is on. The timer is on. The sandglass is flipped. Cliff Kingsbury, you got to step up and you got to help this team, lead this team to the playoffs this year. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you all for tuning into this awesome show. We appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, segment number 3, quarter number 3, Russell Wilson. Is all this talk, is it for real? And can we fix it? You're going to really want to hear what I have to say. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Welcome to segment number 3, quarter number 3. First show of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Hope everyone loves what we're doing here. Give us a comment. Reach out to me on Twitter at Kayvon_sports. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. What do you want to talk about now that we are broadening the spectrum, talking about all types of sports out there? Let me know. Is there something you want to talk about in particular? You got a team out there you want me to discuss? Let me know. I'm excited to talk to you guys more about really anything. Look, we're going to get into some intense conversations here with March Madness and the NBA and the NHL, because now we're getting down the stretch of, look, March Madness is going to be really heavily talked about here on this show because I'm a huge basketball guy. I'm a huge college basketball guy, and I think a lot of my listeners are as well. And March Madness, to me, is the single best sporting postseason we have. All right, I love everything about March Madness because it's a postseason that sets up underdogs. It's a postseason that sets up highlight reels that you just go back and listen to and watch, 10, 15 years from now. It's the only, postseason where a 16 seed beats a 1 seed, where the underdog, the name, UMBC, who is that, right? They come out of nowhere and they beat the 1 seed Virginia. Stuff like that can happen all the time, which is really, really fascinating to me. That's why I love sports so much. So that's something that we will really talk about a lot as we get into Selection Sunday and conference tournaments, and then, of course, the big dance itself. There's a lot going on in the NFL, too, so we'll discuss that as well. We'll discuss the NBA a lot. The NBA is at a very interesting point, right? We have All-Star Weekend this weekend coming up, which is cool. It's going to be different. There won't be really any fans in the stands or anything like that, so it's clearly just a spectator event to put on TV for the fans. It's really all about money. If you really want to get down to the honest truth of it, that's why they're having this All-Star game. A lot of fans weren't happy about it, right? I mean, a lot of players, were not happy about it, but the NBA is all about the fans, and rightfully so, and they wanted to put it on for the fans. That's what they'll tell you. Really, it's about money. TNT, ESPN, these guys pay a lot of money to host games and stuff like that on their networks, and they would have to get some of that money back if they were not going to host the All-Star game. So that's a big part of it as well, but it will be cool. I mean, we'll get to watch the dunk contest, we'll get to watch the skills contest, and we'll get to watch a lot of games moving forward. And as we enter, because usually during the NBA, when you enter All-Star break, that's kind of like the midway point of the season. It's actually a little bit past the midway point, right? That's kind of when you say, okay, coming out of All-Star break, this is when the teams really step up. This is when we really start to understand who's a contender, who's a pretender, who's the best team in the East, who's the best team in the West. Those are things you really start to understand once we get out of All-Star break. So it's the perfect timing for me to really start doing this because we're going to be able to really dive into NBA front forward, full on, coming up on Monday after All-Star weekend is over. But if we just looked at the NBA right now and we just really quickly took a glance of what we're looking at here, you have the Philadelphia 76ers leading the East at 23-12, and you got the Brooklyn Nets right behind them at 23-13. Remember, Brooklyn has not had Kevin Durant over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. He has been sidelined with a hamstring injury. The Nets have come out and said that they're really just being overly cautious about it, which is the smart thing to do, just like the Lakers, right? The Lakers are sitting at 24-11 in the West, and they haven't had Anthony Davis over the last couple weeks. But again, he has an Achilles injury, and they're just being cautious with it, which is smart. Because these teams are here for the long run, right? These teams are here to win in the postseason. They're not here to win now. They're not here to win, you win in a couple of regular season games, you get number one overall seed. The Lakers could care less about getting the number one overall seed. The Nets could care less about getting the number one overall seed. When you acquire players of the caliber of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving on one team, it is win the championship or an unsuccessful season. It is win or go home. It is win or bust, win or failure. When you have a guy like LeBron James on your team paired with Anthony Davis, we have seen this throughout LeBron's entire career. If he doesn't win a championship, he will get criticized, he will get scrutinized, and it will be a failure season for them. LeBron does not care about getting that number one overall seed. LeBron cares about the team playing their best basketball in April, May, and June in the playoffs, right? That's all that matters. LeBron could be the 5th seed for all he cares. All he has to do is have his running mate AD with Dennis Schroeder and the rest of the gang, and he'll feel fine. I think the Brooklyn Nets feel the same, right? Now, the Brooklyn's at an interesting spot because this is their first season altogether. But when you have that much firepower on your team, it's hard to not make that work. And I do think that this is a big if right here. If Anthony Davis is healthy, then the Lakers, to me, are still the team to beat in the whole league. Because I don't see anybody that can match up against AD. The Philadelphia Sixers are the one team that really intrigues me because they have Joel Embiid. They have a center who can bang down low with Anthony Davis, who can also step out and shoot the three. And then they have Ben Simmons who can dish it kind of like LeBron. So I think the 76ers-Lakers matchup would actually probably be the best matchup in that we could get in terms of legit like the game within the game, right? The matchup within the matchup. So AD against Joel Embiid, Big Ben Simmons, LeBron James, like the shooters around them, Doc Rivers, Frank Vogel, that type of matchup to me would be awesome. Now, I think that the average fan wants Brooklyn Nets versus Los Angeles Lakers because that's star power on star power on star power. And And whenever you ask most people, they say, we want all the stars, which is normal, right? You want the best players playing at the biggest moments in the biggest games, which would be the NBA Final. The thing that worries me about the Nets is, one, their injuries. All right, Kyrie's been healthy so far this year, but he has had many injuries in the past. That's something to watch. And then KD. KD, he's coming off a gruesome Achilles tear. And, he's having hamstring injuries. Now, lucky for KD, they went out and got James Harden. So they are not in need of getting KD back right away. Like, KD can miss as many games as he wants because the team is still so good without him that he doesn't have to be there to make sure that they make the playoffs or make sure that they get a decent seed. None of that matters because they have James Harden, who is an Iron Man. He doesn't get hurt. He plays almost every game. And Kyrie Irving so far has been great too. So that's the one positive, but I still worry about KD's injuries. And then I also worry about they don't have any size. They're going to have to play small ball, right? So when they go up against a team like the 76ers, or like a team against like Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, how are they going to be able to play against those teams with big guys down low? And then, of course, if they end up getting through those teams and they meet the Lakers with Anthony Davis, who in the heck is guarding AD? They don't have anyone on their team that can guard AD, in my opinion. So that's the one thing that worries me with the Nets. In terms of the Lakers, the only thing that worries me is if AD is not healthy. If Anthony Davis is not healthy, then the West is wide open. I mean, shoot, the Phoenix Suns could go out of it for all I know. Utah's been great. They don't want to disrespect them. They've been awesome. The Clippers, I told you guys my issues with the Clippers. They still have enough talent where if they can get things together, then there's no doubt they could go on a run. But in the playoffs, in 7-game series, as deeper as it goes, leadership is a culture. It's important. And the Clippers don't have that, in my opinion. But if Anthony Davis is not healthy, the West is wide open for others to win. If Anthony Davis is healthy, I don't see anybody beating LeBron, AD, and the Lakers. I just don't see any team that has those two type caliber players where they have to guard someone down low and bang up with AD in the post, and then obviously guard LeBron the way, and everything he does. So those are the things that I'm really looking at as we head into the second half of the NBA season. But of course, again, starting Monday after this All-Star weekend, we're really going to heavily get into NBA talk from there. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. I want to change gears here to the NFL and what I was saying before we went to break in segment number 2 about J.J. Watt. So, J.J. Watt, as I said, he signed with the Arizona Cardinals. As we know, he signed for $31 million, 2-year deal, $31 million. I think it was like $24, $23 million guaranteed. And the Cardinals were a wild card team, right? We did not see this coming. All the teams that we thought were contenders were right. Now, the Cardinals are a good team, but do we really put them in the category of Super Bowl contender? I know I don't. I love Kyler Murray. He's one of my favorite players, and I think he's good enough to win a Super Bowl one day, but I don't think they're there yet as a team. Now, could this jump them up? Could this make them better? Yeah, no doubt. This could definitely make them better, but they're in the toughest division in football. At least one of it. In the NFC West, you got Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle Shanahan, and that really good 49ers defense with Nick Bosa coming back and getting healthy. And then you got the Rams, who just upgraded at the biggest position, quarterback, to a stud QB in Matt Stafford. You still got a great coach in Sean McVay. You got Cam Akers. You got Aaron Donald. The Rams are really dangerous. And then now you have the Cardinals with a really good quarterback, some great weapons on the outside, and then now you've got a sack tandem of Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt. Kind of like when J.J. Watt had Jadeveon Clowney next to him on the other side of that defensive line when he was in Houston. And when he had Jadeveon Clowney next to him on the opposite side of that line, he had 16 sacks. So in a season. So the last time that he actually had another Pro Bowl caliber pass rusher on his team, he broke out. He dominated because all the attention wasn't on him. The last couple years, all the attention has been on him because Houston's had no one else, and also he's been very banged up. So I do believe that J.J. Watt will have a good season. I really do. I don't think he's done yet. I think he'll have a great season. I think it's a good signing. But my point is this. We were relating him to all these contending teams, right? Like the Buffalo Bills, like the Green Bay Packers, like the Cleveland Browns. Those type of teams, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, that we thought were, they all made the playoffs last year. We thought they were very close to maybe, taking that next step, and a guy like J.J. Watt could really help them out. That's what we thought, right? So it begs the question of, well, why did J.J. pick Arizona? I told you guys what it means for him to pick Arizona. It means that the pressure is now on Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach. It was already going to be on him coming into this season, but now it's really on him. But why did JJ himself pick the Arizona Cardinals? And to me, it's one thing. It's about money. See, we all thought it was going to be about winning, but it's clearly about money because those teams, Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Packers, they weren't going to offer him $31 million on 2 years. They just weren't going to do it. I can tell you that right now. There is no way. Maybe Cleveland would have done it because they've got a lot of cap space and they like to spend money. But Bill Bean or Brandon Bean, I'm thinking of baseball over here. Brandon Bean and the GM of the Buffalo Bills, he wasn't going to pay that type of money. They still got to sign up their quarterback eventually. They still have other players they want to sign. We know for damn sure the Packers weren't going to pay that money. They do not pay that type of money like that often. And the Steelers don't even have that type of money. They're in such a tough cap situation. The Cardinals had money. And him getting that big of a deal and going to the Cardinals, it tells me that J.J. Watt's in it for the money. Now, it's not like he went to a bad team. And first of all, that's not a bad thing. You're playing the game to make money. If you're in it for the money, you want to make more money, hey, all the power to you, brother. I am never going to tell anyone to turn down any type of money. That is you. You earn that money. You go get that money. And it's not like, again, it's not like he picked a bad team. They are a good team. They're an exciting team. And with Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt, they're a scary team. They are. They're a team to reckon with. And with the skill set that Kyler Murray has, my oh my, watch out. But we would not put the Cardinals in the class of one piece away and you're a Super Bowl team, right? We don't put them in that class. Now, it's the NFL. Anything can happen. Kyler Murray could have an MVP level season. They could break out and they could have a good playoff run. But I think a lot of us would be shocked if this time next year we're talking about the Arizona Cardinals winning the Super Bowl. I don't see that happening. So to me, this was more about J.J. Watt saying, you know what? I want to go to a place that's warm. People love retiring in Arizona because it's great weather, really is good, all that stuff. It's a good place to be. So I think he said, okay, check that off. That's warm. Okay, they've got DeAndre Hopkins, someone that I played a lot of my career with, someone I'm really familiar with. Check that off. And they're a pretty good team. They're a good team that needs my help. And then most importantly, they can offer me $31 million. No one else is offering me $31 million. Cha-ching. It's a win-win all the way around. And again, not hating on that. That is his decision, and I fully respect that decision. And I really do think he'll have a big impact there if he can stay healthy with him and Chandler Jones. Remember, before Chandler Jones got hurt this year, that guy was dominating the sack count every single year. Double-digit sacks every single year, over and over and over. I actually did a segment before the season started on how if Chandler Jones stays healthy, I think he could break the single-season sack record that Michael Strahan set. And because he got close one year. He got really close. And he's just been doing it over and over. He ended up getting hurt, so that didn't even happen. But Chandler Jones he's a very underrated player for how good he is. And maybe that's because he's out in Arizona. I don't know. He just doesn't get talked about a lot for some reason. But the guy is special. And when you have to then cover for J.J. Watt, that leaves Chandler Jones even more open, which that right there will be a massive impact. So even if we don't see big, gaudy numbers for J.J. Watt, him just being there, his presence, the fear that he will put into offensive coordinators and offensive line coaches, the night before, they're going to have to game plan for him, which opens up the door more for Chandler Jones, which is a win for the Arizona Cardinals. So I love the signing. I really do. I just wanted to get that out there as saying, JJ, a lot of people thought JJ was going to go to a team that was one or two pieces away from possibly making the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl. He didn't do that. He went a different route. He went to a good team, not a great team. He went to a team that could give him more money than anyone else. And that is what it is, and I'm totally fine with that. Now, what does this mean, though, for the NFC West? Because what did we hear Russell Wilson complain about to Dan Patrick with this whole rumor started about possibly Russell Wilson wanting out of Seattle, possibly wanting to force a trade? He gets sacked too much. That's what Russell Wilson kept saying. He gets hit too much. He called out his offensive line. Remember, we did a whole segment on the GSMC football podcast about how he is like Bo Callahan on Draft Day, the movie. His teammates might not like him anymore because he's calling out his offensive line. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're telling me that Russell Wilson's now going to have to go up against twice a year Nick Bosa on the 49ers, Aaron Donald on the Los Angeles Rams, and now Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt on the Arizona Cardinals? If Russell Wilson was not happy before, if the Seattle Seahawks can't get that offensive line fixed, he is really not going to be happy moving forward. I can guarantee you that. This is the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Speaking of Russell Wilson, it's now time. I've teased it since segment number 1. We will now officially talk Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. Are we inching closer to a Deshaun Watson situation, or is this all smoke up in the air and there's no really fire to be seen? We'll talk about it right after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. 3 segments down, 1 segment to go here. I hope everyone's enjoying the show. Hope everyone's having a great start to their week. Weekend's been going by really fast lately. I feel like I look up Friday, it's Sunday, we're back to work on Monday. But hey, that's life. It's rolling. We got to enjoy it with a smile, keep our head up, be nice to people, and help others out, and we should feel a lot of purpose in this world, in my opinion. Look, it's really funny. This is kind of randomly off topic, but my family had a really funny incident. It's not funny, but well, yeah, it's actually pretty funny, but it's also just like, how did this happen? So, you know how when you're shopping on Amazon, you can put things in carts, right? I mean, you can do this on any website pretty much, but Amazon in particular, you can shop on there, and if you see something you like, you can put it in your cart and come back later. I never understood why people do that. It makes me so aggravated. It has officially become a pet peeve of mine when people put things in their cart, their shopping cart, and then their online, obviously, shopping cart, not their legit shopping cart, and they just leave it there. And they come back later or whatever, or they end up never buying it. Why do that? You can just look it up again, right? Amazon will also tell you, they'll show you the stuff that you were shopping. Like, it will be there on your main screen when you go back to Amazon. I don't understand why people have to leave things in their cart. It's annoying. It is annoying. I do not like it, okay? I see people do it all the time. My sister does it all the time. All the time. Well, my sister taught my dad how to do that, right? And we all share one Amazon account, right? We all have our cards on there, and, we buy stuff on there and all that stuff. And, we have Amazon Prime, get movies, all that great stuff. There are different addresses, everything. So we have our Amazon account, right? And my sister somehow showed my dad, who is, he's a very smart guy. He's an aerospace engineer. But let's just say he's not the best with technology, and Dad, if you're listening, that's no slight to you. Again, very, very smart guy, aerospace engineer, just not the best with technology. And my sister shows my dad, oh, this is where you can just put things in your cart, and, if you want to come get it later, you can get it later. And I'm like, why do that? Why? So annoying. Well, anyways, I didn't know that she was showing him this. So my dad was looking at a bunch of chairs, I guess, for his house, and he ended up putting like 6 chairs in the cart. Well, he ended up purchasing everything that was in the cart. Everything. It was like $1,200 worth of stuff. And it was just random, like, chairs were getting, and my mom's card was on the thing, all right? My mom's card was the default card, so he didn't even get charged for it. My mom got charged for it. So next thing I know, I get a text from my mom saying, why do I keep getting boxes of chairs in front of my house? So my mom looks at her bank account, $1,200 is gone from it, and she's just getting over and over. There are boxes of chairs from Amazon getting shipped to her house. And I'm over here like, oh, I knew that this was going to happen eventually. You don't put things in your cart. So, I get on the phone and I yell and I say, Dad, don't worry. This isn't your fault. I'm going to call Sarah, my sister. I'm going to go at her for this. So I call Sarah and say, this is not my fault, blah, 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 blah. It's totally your fault, Sarah. Totally your fault if you're listening to this. I'm not blaming it on Dad. I'm blaming it on you because you taught Dad how to do that stuff. So now we're dealing with this issue with Amazon where I'm trying to, return everything, get all the money back. The problem is not all of the stuff was bought directly through Amazon. You know how Amazon has other sellers, like other companies on their site that you can buy things through? You buy it through Amazon, but you're actually buying it from that other company. Well, some of these chairs were from other companies like that. So Amazon was like, we can cancel all the ones that you bought from us, and you can just send it back and we'll return your money once we get it. But these other ones, you got to get in contact with them. So I'm over here, cleaning everything up. I'm emailing these other sellers, telling them what happened. One seller's giving me a really hard time saying, we can't just return these chairs. And I'm like, sir, we don't need chairs. Like, I don't know why my dad was even looking at it. There's no reason for us to have these chairs here. You got to take them back. So it's just something, that's my PSA for the day, all right? That's my public service announcement right there. Just don't keep things in your cart. Why do it? Just either buy it on the spot or take it out of your cart and come back and get it later. It's not that complicated. Whatever you searched to find it that first time, guess what? If you search the same thing, you're going to find it again. you're going to find it again. It's not a magic trick. It's not rocket science. Don't keep things in your cart. Please. That's all I'm asking. All right? Because now I'm over here dealing with all that. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon. I thank you guys for letting me go off on that tangent real quick. I needed to get it out. That's the best part about having a nice little platform to talk. I like to talk, and sometimes people don't like to listen to me talk. So instead, I can just come on here and talk to you guys. And I think most of you enjoy it. But if you don't, you can always turn it off and come back later. And I do hope you do come back later. But that's what's going to happen. Sometimes you just got to spill the guts. You just got to let all of it out and sit back and say, that was nice. That was nice. You know what's not nice right now? What's happening in Seattle, especially for all you fans up in the Pacific Northwest. You're not happy. You can't be happy, right? Because your Pro Bowl, future Hall of Famer, star-studded quarterback is not happy. And if he's not happy, well, you as fans can't get happy because that leaves you worried. It leaves you questioning what's going to happen with the future of this team. Now, what do we know about this situation? What do we know? We know that this is not the first time Russell Wilson has complained. This is not the first time. I want to make that very clear. I've heard a lot of people say, why is this coming out of nowhere from Russell Wilson? This is not coming out of nowhere. He is just really emphasizing the point this time. He's taking it to a whole new level this time. But this has been brought out of Russell's mouth before, all right? He has complained before about getting hit too much. He's complained that his offensive line isn't that good. And you remember a couple years ago, there was that whole idea of Russell said he would love to play in New York because his wife Sierra loves New York. She likes to be in the bigger cities. That was up there. There has been issues before with Russell Wilson. If we go even farther back, there was locker room issues because a lot of guys on that Legion of Boom defense, they didn't really like the way Seattle was treating Russell better than they were treating them. It was kind of like the whole Clippers thing, that dynamic. They ended up rolling with Russell, and all of those guys ended up kind of just eventually leaving the organization. So there's always been some issues, but now there's some real issues coming between Russell and the organization. And now it's getting much more heated. It's getting much more magnified by Russell's comments. Now, for all of you that are living under a rock once again and not up to date on this, Russell Wilson went on the great Dan Patrick show, and I say great because Dan Patrick is phenomenal. He is one of the best at this job right here. And on the show, he straight up said it all. He straight up called out the organization. He called out his teammates. He said that he's getting hit too much. And he said that he's not happy with what's going on in Seattle. And you know what? After all that stuff, that was so important. You know what's the most noticeable thing to me that he did not say? He didn't say "Go Hawks" at the end of the interview. If you go listen, just go on YouTube and type in Russell Wilson sound bites, Russell Wilson interviews. Every time Russell Wilson has an interview, he ends it with "Go Hawks." It's kind of like what Coach O down in LSU at Orgeron, a coach of the LSU Tigers. It's like him. Whenever he ends an interview, he always goes "Go Tigers" in that Louisiana accent, right? So he always goes "Go Tigers." Russell Wilson always says "Go Hawks" at the end of his interview. It does. And look, that sounds silly, but it's seriously something to notice. He doesn't say "Go Hawks" at the end of this interview. He doesn't. So he's frustrated. He calls out his team. He calls out some of his offensive linemen, saying he's getting hit too much. He's not happy with it. And then he doesn't say "Go Hawks," right? So clearly there is an issue going on. Then, a week goes by. There's all this speculation. Could Russell Wilson really get traded? Blah, blah, blah. Well, then they take it a step further. And Russell Wilson's agent comes out and says, Russell is not demanding a trade, but if he was to get traded, he would like to go to these 4 teams. And he names Chicago, he names Las Vegas, he names Dallas, and he names New Orleans. Now, why he names those teams, different scenarios. We can get into that all day long. Look, Dallas is a massive market. If he wins in Dallas, he'll be a king there for the rest of his life. He'll never pay for anything. Dallas has won a Super Bowl for so long. He truly would be royalty if he could win in Dallas. It's also Dallas, right? Big city, big franchise, maybe the biggest franchise in all of sports. Chicago, I don't really understand that one. I don't get it. They don't have much to offer to me. They have a good defense, but their offensive line isn't that great. Their weapons aren't that great. I would much rather stay in Seattle than go to Chicago. The Saints, I totally get, but that's never going to happen. But the Saints makes total sense because they've got a head coach in Sean Payton who is super quarterback friendly. Russell Wilson would love to play for them. They've got a great offensive line, and they've got a fantastic defense. They truly are in win-now mode. So I get that, but the reason why I say that's never going to happen, because the Saints are in such a terrible situation with cap, it would be impossible for them to pull off a trade for Russell Wilson. It really would. And then Las Vegas, I totally get. Another great system, John Gruden, Las Vegas, Sierra would be happy in Las Vegas. Decent team, good weapons, good running back, good offensive line, just not a very good defense. So, but I totally get why he would pick Las Vegas there. So that's it. And I honestly think there's probably more teams he would accept a trade to. I just think those are kind of his way of just throwing out some agent talk there, using that as maybe a bargaining tool or whatever. But the interesting thing to me is his agent says he's not forcing a trade, but if he was to get traded, I mean, what are you pretty much telling us? You're telling us that, hey, Russell wouldn't mind leaving your franchise, just to let you guys know. He's not demanding to get out, but he wants you to know he's not leaving. Now, this is what I have to say. Why is Russell Wilson, why are we at this point? How did it get to this point with Russell Wilson? Well, it's pretty clear to me. Russell Wilson is not happy with the way the offense is run in Seattle. That's what it comes down to. Look, he's going to complain about getting hit too much. That's true. He does get hit too much. There is no doubt about that. Since he's entered the league, he has been sacked more than anyone in the league. Second has been Matt Ryan. That's it. All right? He has been sacked the most since he's entered the league. So he's not lying there. But I actually don't think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is he's not getting his single person accolades, his individual accolades, and they're not winning. They're not winning big. See, Russell Wilson wants one or the other. He'd like both, but he would take winning over individual awards, no doubt. But if they're not going to be winning, well, then he would like to be winning the MVP. Well, he's not doing either. And he's not doing either because they're not letting him cook, right? We hear all the time, let Russ cook. What does that mean exactly? It means let Russell Wilson do his thing. Stop running the ball as much. Stop taking the ball out of his hands. Russell wants the ball in his hands. Let him create magic from there. Well, that's not how Pete Carroll runs his team. Pete Carroll is a run-first guy, play good defense, destroy the time of possession, and win football games in the ugly, old-fashioned way. That's what Pete Carroll does, ladies and gentlemen. That is who Pete Carroll is. And Russell Wilson's starting to look at it, and he's starting to say, Pete Carroll's not going to change for me. This is who he is. This is the system he wants. And I'm tired of it. I want to cook. I want to win an MVP. And more importantly, I want to win a Super Bowl, and I don't see us doing that here in Seattle. This isn't my opinion. This is what I'm telling you I believe Russell Wilson is thinking, because it just makes sense with everything we're hearing, okay? I'm not saying that I believe all this stuff. This is what Russell is saying in my mind, okay? So I look at it and I say this. Seattle now has an option, because I want to be honest here, guys, and I hate to say this to Seattle fans, but this isn't getting fixed. Name me a time when an athlete of Russell Wilson's caliber has been disgruntled and things have gotten fixed. Things do not get fixed. You can't put the toothpaste back in the jar, or whatever it's called, back in the tube, right? You just can't. Once it's out, it's out. And now that all this dirty laundry is out, it is out. Eventually, Russell Wilson will be gone in Seattle. It might not be this year. It might not be next year. But Russell Wilson will not retire a Seahawk. I can promise you that. Because it's out there. Once it happens, and it's happened now, it's just going to keep coming up. Questions are going to be happening. They're going to be asked in the locker room. They're going to be asked to Russell Wilson. They're going to be asked to Pete Carroll. And it's going to become a nuisance. It's going to become annoying for everyone. And the best thing to do is move on, right? Unless Seattle says, we want Russell Wilson, not Pete Carroll. Because what I believe, I'm reading through the lines here. I'm trying to take us into a deeper conversation. I'm trying to take us into what I believe Russell's saying. And I think he's saying that I want to run a different system. And whether that's here in Seattle, that's great. But if not, peace out. I'm going to go do it somewhere else. Well, ladies and gentlemen, how do you run a different system in Seattle? You get a different coach. Seattle now has a choice to make. Should they move on from Pete Carroll and roll with their star quarterback, Russell Wilson? Or should they trade Russell Wilson and roll with the head coach? And ladies and gentlemen, that answer is the easiest possible answer. You get rid of Pete Carroll ASAP. Pete Carroll is a great coach. Pete Carroll is a national champion and a Super Bowl NFL winning coach. He is a Hall of Fame coach in my eyes. But guys, he was going 7-9 and 8-8 every single year until Pete Carroll found Russell Wilson in the third round, I think it was. He was about to get fired until Russell Wilson came in there and saved his job by being that franchise caliber player. Pete Carroll is replaceable. Russell Wilson, he might be replaceable, but not anytime soon. You don't just get rid of a quarterback like Russell Wilson and are back into playing, playoff mode right away. You will then begin a rebuild. But if the real issue is that Russell Wilson is not happy, he wants the ball in his hands. He wants to win the football game. He wants to cook. Let Russ cook. Pete Carroll has his ways. Pete Carroll is stubborn. He has won in this league, and he believes the right way to win is the way he's doing it right now. Well, Russell Wilson doesn't see that anymore. He wants to do it his way. He wants the ball in his hands. He wants to put up the gaudy stats. He wants to throw, for 40 touchdowns. He wants to throw for 5,000 yards. He wants to win the MVP, and he wants to win Super Bowls. And Russell Wilson thinks the best way to do that is putting the ball in his hands, not playing this run, play action game. No, pass. Eventually, we can run the ball here and there. That's what Russell Wilson wants to do. Pete Carroll is not that kind of coach. So Seattle's got to make a decision. Because I promise you guys, that toothpaste is not going back in the tube. Everything is out, and this isn't the first incident. This is numerous times we're now hearing from Russell Wilson, and now his agent is even telling us teams that he would go to. It's beyond messy now. There's no fixing it. You either move on from Pete, or you move on from Russ. It might not be this year, but it will happen. And I hate to say it, but that's just how these leagues work, guys. The NFL is no different. Deshaun Watson will eventually get moved. No matter how stubborn the Texans want to be, he will eventually get moved. It always happens. It always happens. Wow, what a show. What a show. Our first ever GSMC Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I can't wait. Remember, every Monday and Thursday will be when we put out our shows. When we record them, they should come out the next day after that. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you follow along with us. So thank you for listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, write a nice review. That really does help us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and I look forward to talking to you again later this week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.